Now, our speaker has a PhD in biological anthropology. She has a Bachelor of Science with honours in biological sciences, a graduate diploma of education science, a diploma in clinical hypnotherapy, and a diploma in parapsychology. Now, Gemma is the host of and the creator of the weekly live paranormal radio show, The Witching Hour on 4ZZZ, which is 102.1 FM, and that's on Saturday nights from 10 p.m. And that's been airing for 6 years, and I know Gemma's been interviewing a lot of people over that time. You must have lots in your in your library. And those people include like Graham Hancock, David Icke, David Childress, Eric von Daniken, and I know she went down to the Gosford Glyphs with Eric von Daniken when he was out here recently. She's a writer and a cultural arts, theatre and music critic for Limelight magazine and various websites. So Gem is going to talk about those strange things like what do we connect with when we're asleep? Do we open portals in our consciousness? So without any further ado, please welcome Dr. Gemma Regan.
Okay, as she said, I'm Dr. Gemma Regan, but also my pseudonym is Nyx Full Moon. So maybe if you've heard my show, you'll recognise my accent, which people often do. So I'm thinking about sleep and altered states. Now, I've been researching the paranormal for a long time now. I've had paranormal experiences all my life, and so I've wanted to combine science with an interest in the paranormal. And often you will never get the same two things. It's very rare that you have scientists, real scientists with qualifications, not ones who give themselves doctorates, and there's a lot of them around. And so I'm really interested in what the supernatural is, trying to define it, etc., etc. So this talk tonight, and thank you to UFO Research Queensland for inviting me along, is all about how I've combined a lot of my skills and my knowledge to look into what the supernatural actually is. So there's lots of ideas. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a bit of information about sleep, which hopefully you'll be interested in, because lots of people seem to not understand what sleep actually is. And I'm going to give you some examples from real people who've had experiences. So I've got a lot of audio and video, and I've got a lot of examples of video of UFOs, consciously calling in UFOs. I'm sure some of you have done that before. And also some audio as well, and some personal experiences as well, because I've seen lots of UFOs and aliens and, had it all. You'll hear about it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through. First of all, I'd just like a show of hands for how many people have actually had anything they would consider a supernatural experience. Any type of thing that wouldn't be considered normal. Okay, quite a lot, which you would expect here. And what about around the state of sleep? Maybe you've woken up, or you've had it before going to sleep. Anybody? Yep, good. What about when you've been meditating or driving or had that altered state of consciousness? Yes, show of hands. Yep, okay. Quite a lot of the same people. And that's what you find, that there's a similarity in people, and that there's definitely a predisposition for people being able to have these experiences. And I'm going to explain to you possibly why. Okay, so we'll just see if we can get this working. Yes. So that's my show. If you haven't heard it, it's 10 till midnight. 10 o'clock is the supernatural time. I used to be on at 2 o'clock in the morning, which is why I called it the Witching Hour. And it's on demand. So if you don't want to stay up and listen, you can go on any time onto the website that's below, 4ZZZ FM, and you can listen to the last 6 shows. And I've done lots of things recently that you'd be interested in. Okay, we need to get moving because I've got tons to do. I just thought this quote encompasses what we're going to talk about. So sleep hath its own world and a wide realm of wild reality. Dreams in their development have breath and tears and tortures and a touch of joy. Now, we're going to have some tortures definitely in this, and a little bit of joy in the sexy state. So maybe we'll have to close some people's ears, but lots of people have paranormal experiences in that sense too. So sleep is accesses the archetypal world, and it's inhabited by transpersonal beings, gods and demons. Now, Carl Jung described it as being an irrational fear of the dark, which every child has an irrational fear of the dark. What it is, it's an atavistic resurgence. So it's a modification of a biological structure. So it's an ancestral trait. Obviously, it was dark a lot in ancient times, and so you would have just a fire to keep you company. And so obviously you're much more susceptible to being preyed upon or whatever it might be. And so what it is, it's a resurgence. It's a thing that comes back to people. It's always there that we have this fear of being in the dark. The same as with sleep. Okay, so we'll just do briefly a little bit about sleep. I'm going to go in a little bit more detail soon, but I'm going to give you some examples. I don't want anyone to fall asleep. I'll be watching, and I've got some little jumpy things too to keep you all awake. So if you do fall asleep, I'm warning you, okay? Okay, so sleep is the natural periodic suspension of consciousness during which the powers of the body are restored. Okay, so your life basically cycles through three things, three periods. You're awake and you're conscious, hopefully. You go into a non-REM state, so non-rapid eye movement, so you're not dreaming, or you can dream sometimes, we'll talk a little bit about that, and then rapid eye movement, which is when you have this different state that you're in. So this is going to be the first example. This is somebody that I interviewed, a child, and it's actually a child I know, and this is their experience. Let's see if we can...
So this is the account of a very terrifying experience I had when I was 13.
Just a minute.
Sleeping in the base
house.
That helps.
So what happened was, in the middle of the night, out of nowhere, I woke up and it was very dark, but I turned over and I saw this huge black figure that looked like a giant spider almost, with these sort of feelers like reaching over the bed to try and touch me. And there was several other ones around, but they seemed sort of smaller and further back, not leering over the bed. And so I was terrified, and I jumped and sat straight up, and I threw my covers over whatever it was to try and get time so I ran. I jumped out of the bed, ran to turn the light on, and like spun around to see, and there was nothing then. My covers were just lying on the floor. And that's what happened.
So do you think you were awake?
I was definitely awake during the events of what happened, definitely, because I mean, I threw the covers, they were on the floor, and I turned the light on, and then I sat just for a couple of minutes going, what was that? I don't think I turned the light off again that night. And yeah, eventually I think I convinced myself that everything was okay and went back to sleep with the lights on.
So does that sound familiar to anybody? Has anybody had that sort of type of experience? Anybody show of hands? A few? Yep. It's so often it's considered to be a mantid, but it could again be greys, it could be spiders. I'm going to talk a little bit about spiders and why these are all connected. You would think that they couldn't be, but there's a reason for it.
This is no dream, this is really happening.
So that's just a clip from Rosemary's Baby. I don't know if you've all seen that one, where she suddenly realizes that it isn't actually a dream that you're in. And that's the problem, is that it's difficult to be able to discern between whether you're actually consciously awake, you're in a lucid dream, or you're just asleep and you're dreaming. Now, in the example before, she said that she thought that she had this as a dream experience, but then she realized she was really awake because she'd actually physically thrown the thing, she'd gone up and she'd turned the light on before they all disappeared. This is what the problem is. There's such a fine boundary between sleep and awake. Now, this is an example which I find very interesting, so just have a listen and then I'll explain it.
When I was 6, I used to go up to my parents' bed and sleep in between them sometimes, and some little visitor used to come and see me. It was a little goblin thing, and it used to come through the window once I'd woken up. I was just sitting up in bed and it just floated through the window and sat on the end of my parents' bed, and he talked to me and he used to take me around the house, and he was like a little friend, I guess. And then he left when I got back into bed and I went back to sleep. And yeah, it was a bit strange, and I didn't really think much of it for a while, but then I mentioned it to my mum one day and she said she'd seen a similar thing, and we talked about what it looked like, and it was a little green thing, kind of like a goblin from a movie called The Spiderwick Chronicles. It was small and pale green skin, and it was pretty wrinkly as well, and he used to wear clothes like a little petticoat, and he had pointy ears, and yeah, he had some facial hair and a big smiley face. Yeah, he was a bit strange. I used to think it was pretty good. I used to like it. I used to think he was a friend. I didn't really used to be scared of it at all. I got a bit weird about it when a bit later, thinking about it now, it's a bit strange to think about, but when I used to have it, I used to like it and think he was a bit of a friend, and he always used to be nice to me. So when I found out my mum could also see it, I was a bit weirded out, because I knew it wasn't a dream anymore, and it was something that I was seeing, and I was actually talking to some strange being, I guess. So it was a bit of a strange experience.
So the weird thing about this is, it's my daughter, by the way. I'd been having these experiences a lot of my life, but particularly in a place that I was living in, Cooma. And it was, this little goblin used to come through the window, and he used to sit on the end of my bed. Now, I'd told my husband about it, but obviously I'd never told anybody else, because what's the point? Nobody ever believes you. But he used to sit at the end of the bed, and I'd already described him to my husband, and I'd never mentioned it to my kids. Obviously, they're little kids, you're not going to talk about stuff like that, all the aliens and things that you have experiences. But one day we were just chatting, and I think she actually saw this, and she said, "Oh, that's the goblin that comes to the end of the bed when I sleep in your bed with you, Mummy." And I thought, what? Because that's sort of corroborating. We're either sharing, and we never experienced it at the same time. That's the unusual thing. So it's sort of, is that goblin actually appearing there? Is it coming to see me? And she's experiencing it. And I used to take her around the house and show her things and talk to her and interact with her. She'd never mentioned this to me. And obviously I'd never mentioned it to her. So there's a shared experience, and it could be more corroborating. Now, we're just going to go a bit about sleep, because you need to understand all about sleep, and I'm sure some of you already know that. And if you went the Afterlife talk that I did recently at Cheryl's house, you'll know a little bit about it too. But I was a sleep scientist, and you want them to do this, not snoring so loud. But I used to, just a year or two ago, I was working as a sleep scientist in a hospital. And I wanted to do this job because I wanted to look at people's brains when they were asleep. I was fascinated. So I trained and became a sleep scientist and worked for a few years there. And you basically wire everybody up, and it could be for anything. It could be for palliative care. It could be just for whether they're having problems breathing. They could have sleep issues, REM behavior issues, whatever it might be. Or you could be doing withdrawal treatment, where you withdraw all care for them, see how they cope, and then add it back before anything crisis happens, just to see what they actually need. That's a common thing as well. So the good thing about that is that I actually got to see people asleep and look at their brain waves the whole time. Let's Different types of sleep disorders. Dysomnias, where you've got the sleep disordered breathing. I'm sure some of you will probably have CPAP. Narcolepsy, where you're just falling asleep all the time. Insomnia, where people say that they can't sleep, but usually it's a very behavioural thing. It's what you're doing before you try and go to sleep. And parasomnias, that's what we're looking at. So it's how people who are trying to sleep have all these different things. It could be somnambulism, sleepwalking, REM behaviour disorder, or supernatural experiences. That's what I'm really interested in. So the different things that I'm going to cover quickly, it'll be myoclonic hypnic jerks, hallucinations, sleep paralysis. Now this is always linked with, often linked with abductions, alien abductions. Exploding head syndrome, I'm sure some of you here might have had that. Visitations, so they can have any form. So I'm going to talk about why they would have a different form. Somnambulism, REM behaviour disorder, dreams and lucid dreaming, and astral travel. So what I did, wire people up and look at their brain activity. So we're looking at electroencephalography, which is EEG. And if you look at the 3 different outputs, you've got deep sleep, REM sleep, and with just eyes closed. So I just want to show you that we're focusing on the central region of the brain. Okay, so we're looking at what's particular of interest is the theta waves. Another thing to note, and just keep this all in your mind when we go on with all the paranormal experiences, the alien abductions and stuff. If you look at this is an output from your eyes. So what we do is we put electrodes around your eyes and we see what your eyes are doing. So awake is the top one. So that's your eyes open and moving around. When you're falling asleep, they start to roll. So straight away we know when people are faking if they're asleep or whether they're actually going to sleep. We can always tell. And in REM state, that's what it looks like. Very, very similar to being awake. So basically, when you're asleep and having dreams, you're actually still seeing. The question is, what is it that you're seeing? That's what I'm really interested in. What are you actually witnessing? So this is the sort of output that you'd get. Lots of wavy lines. And as I say, this is the brain output in REM. So this is rapid eye movement sleep. This is when you have the majority of your dreams, and these are when all the lucid dreams and the experiences are that you have. So I just quickly want to show you the brain waves. So the top one will show you normal consciousness. So you're producing beta waves. So that's just normal now. Hopefully you're all producing beta waves. You're not yet going to sleep or anything. When you close your eyes, straight away the brain patterns change just with closing your eyes. So you're not asleep, just by closing your eyes you produce alpha waves. Okay, so this is the frequency here of alpha waves. So that's when people start to feel drowsy or something. Or you can just have your eyes closed and be thinking, daydreaming, whatever, and you're producing different brain waves straight away. When you go into deep sleep, they're very slow wave sleep, so we can always see that's your recuperative sleep. The theta waves, that's what we're really interested in. So they're produced centrally in the brain, and that's through REM sleep and light sleep and also meditation. Okay, so it's interesting about that. Now when they've looked at monks and people like that who meditate all the time when they do what's called transcendental meditation, and they produce a very high frequency wave as well, combined with theta, which is the gamma waves, and that's considered to be heightened perception. So just quickly, this is the last bit of wiggly lines, don't worry. I just want to show you how the top one is awake, so that's your brainwave pattern, and when you're in REM sleep it is very, very similar. Okay, so even though you're actually physically asleep, your brainwave patterns are very similar to being awake. Okay. So I'm sure a lot of you have done this. It's a nightmare because you spend ages trying to get to sleep, especially people who have insomnia. You get that jerk, you get the feeling of falling. Very common, 70% of Australians supposed to experience it regularly. And it's usually when you're transitioning from the eye rolling stage, falling asleep, to being a theta, starting to produce theta waves. There's different causes that have explained it, because it seems ridiculous. You've spent ages trying to get to sleep, and then you bloody jerk yourself awake, and you, what? Okay, so your nerves can misfire as your temperature and respiration drops, which it obviously does. Your brain it could be an evolutionary arboreal adaptation, because obviously we used to live in the trees, and it just gives you a little jerk to make sure that you're actually still hanging on the tree, you're in a safe area, in a safe environment. Could be, again, for just checking that there's no danger around you as you're ready to go to sleep, just as a little check. So that's the ideas behind it anyway. Okay, into hallucinations. So I've talked to a lot of sleep scientists now in my field, and a lot of other. I used to work in medicine. I've done genetics research. She said I did anthropology. I've worked in several universities and hospitals, and every time you tell them about one of your experiences around sleep, they say it's a hallucination. Well, I'm here to tell you it's definitely not always a hallucination. I don't think it is. So you've got hypnagogic and hypnopompic. So Greek hypnos means sleep, and gogic is to enter into. So as you're falling asleep, you can have these hallucinations, and I'm just going to mention a few of them. And as you are waking up, fading away, sleep fades away, hypnopompic, then you can have the experiences. And that's the most common way that you have these sort of experiences. So is there anybody here who hasn't had any type of strange experience, whether it be a sound, a smell, or anything at night when they've been either falling asleep or waking up, who haven't had that type of experience? Everybody's had something. Oh, one person, two. Aldo. Colin, oh, well, Colin, I would expect it of you, but you need to relax more. Okay.
I think I relax too much.
I know, I think so.
I just drop off.
You probably go straight into deep wave sleep.
The worst thing that's ever happened to me while I was asleep is to wake up with a hot water bottle at least.
Oh, that's not nice. Well, that's what you say, eh, Colin? That's what you tell your wife. Okay, so we've got different types of hallucinations that you can have. Visual ones, so this is when you see things like monsters. Some people just see shapes. Often you can be seeing shapes in your eyes, or you can have your eyes open but you can still be asleep. A lot of people sleep with their eyes open, which freaks you out when you're a sleep scientist, because you know they're asleep and their eyes come open and you're looking at their brainwaves and you know they're asleep, but they're staring at the camera because you're watching them through cameras and they're staring at you. You go, oh, don't like that. Demons, people, you can see all sorts of things, animals. Obviously, we're going to focus on aliens tonight, but also you can have hissing, humming, whistling, human voices, and exploding head syndrome, which I'm going to talk about. Smells, either nice ones or unpleasant ones. And then you can have tactile experiences. So you might not see anything, but you feel it. You can feel that person climbing onto your bed. You can feel something tickling your hair or stroking your face or something. You know there's something, or even the weight on the bed. That's one of them, where you just think it's your cat or something, and of course it's not. So these are often all associated with sleep paralysis. Okay, so we're going to just talk a little bit about other altered consciousness states. When you get sick, you can have these experiences as well. Hopefully not one as vile as this, but if you just have a listen.
When I was younger, I used to be sick sometimes, or just when I was laying in my room, I used to hear all these voices calling out my name, and it used to get loud and soft, and sometimes it was so loud like I couldn't even hear anything. It always made me really scared, and I didn't like it when that happened, and I never felt safe when it was happening, but I wasn't really sure what they ever were, but they only really came when I was sick and like lying in bed. And so, yeah.
In the daytime?
Yeah, mainly in the daytime, really.
And what were they saying to you?
They would just say my name, mainly. They said other stuff, but I don't really remember that much. But yeah, they kept all these different kind of voices, like men and women, and it was loud sometimes and soft sometimes, and it kept like changing. And it was really crazy. It was like there was loads of people shouting around me.
And has it?
Yeah, I haven't experienced that since then. I don't know, it was just in that place.
Stopped?
When I was about 8, it stopped. Yeah, it was scary time.
Scary times. So, yeah, often if you're sick, you have that altered state of consciousness as well, especially if you've got a fever. So hallucinations very common with children. They will see and hear things a lot if they have a fever. So again, it's theta production. It's affected by temperature as well. Okay, so we're going to have exploding head syndrome. Fortunately, that doesn't happen. You can have, though, a simulated explosion or a loud noise happen inside your head when you're asleep or going to sleep. Often it's very common when you're going to sleep. You suddenly go, what was that? And of course your partner, whoever's with you, says, I didn't hear anything. You can have ringing, screaming, explosions. Very common in women, especially over 50. Now, they don't know why yet. They say it might be hormonal, but then they say everything's hormonal for women. But it is twice as common in women. When people do have it, and often I've talked to a lot of people through the sleep side, they have it every night and it wakes them up, or it terrifies them because they don't know what's happening, and they give them antidepressants which just basically knock you out. And when you see people who are on antidepressants, you can see what happens to your brain waves. Basically it's flatlined. So the sleep you have when you're on antidepressants or on sleep tablets, it's like flatlining. So you're not getting the proper deep sleep you need, and you often don't dream, so you often don't have the REM sleep. So sleep paralysis, this is the really scary one now, and often it's combined with all the hallucinations and stuff as well, just to give you a double whammy. Oh yeah, forgot about that bit. So are there any people who have had that type of experience? Yes, where you're just pinned in your bed, you feel like you're awake, you know you're awake, and you can't move. It's very, very common. So it happens to 7%, they say, but I think it's less reported. It happens in more people. And it often happens sometimes when you fall asleep, but more commonly when you are waking up. And you wake up and suddenly you go, oh. And so what it is you have something called gamma-aminobutyric acid, GABA, and glycine. They're released into your brain, and they interrupt your voluntary movement while you're having sleep. So people who have REM behavior disorder, they act out their sleep. And it can be very dangerous. And we used to have people in the hospital, and you'd have to almost tie them down. You'd have to move everything out the way because they would be acting out their sleep. And it's also associated with some degenerative diseases as well, but not necessarily. And so that system's not working. So there's another explanation. These are the scientific explanations I'm giving you first. We're clearing that away, I'm going to say, so they can't say, oh, I haven't said. This is clearing away all that sort of stuff. Very common, as I say, with alien abductions and sexual encounters as well. That's a goodie. Okay, so these hallucinations, I've had so many of these. One of the most common, I've had fairies, ghosts, demons come to the side of my bed, drones, little flying drones, and the metallic spiders. Is there anybody here who's had metallic spiders when they've been asleep and they've woken up? One, two, three, four. Oh, excellent. It's very rare, but there's a commonality between all of them, which is really concerning to me. Now, I interviewed David Icke a couple of years ago when he was actually allowed to come into the country, because he was banned recently. There's the freedom of speech that we don't have in Australia anymore, by the way. We'll soon not be able to even do this. But I interviewed him, did a long interview with him, but I actually had heard that he'd had this same experience with the metallic spider, so I want you to listen to this. Now, there's one question that I must ask you. I've been wanting to ask you, the only person who seems to have shared a similar experience with me, and that's the metallic spiders at night. Now, is that true that you have experienced those? Because I'm still experiencing them.
Yes, I've had a few in Australia, actually. It's a strange thing. What happened is, I don't know what it would be about 5 years ago, in my flat on the Isle of Wight in England, I would have these massively vivid dreams. Like so vivid, it was as vivid as the world that I'm sitting in now talking to you. And then every time I woke up, there would be these like metallic spiders on the wall or hovering above me, and the metallic spiders, I don't know any other way of describing them really. They were, they looked a bit like spiders, and they were vibrating very, very fiercely, and they were metallic in colour. And I had some strange things. I mean, one night I got so sick of it because of all this activity, electromagnetism. That's what it is. It's electromagnetic activity. It appears as a metallic spider, but it's actually an electromagnetic field. And I remember I got so sick of it one night, I thought I'm going to go and sleep in the front room on the sofa, right? So I went there, slept on the sofa, woke up about an hour or so later, and in front of me was, like a cat's right wheel going around like a firework. It was metallic, and it was spinning so fast, and I watched it. It wasn't something that appeared and disappeared. I watched it for about a minute, and then I stood up and I walked towards it, and as I walked towards it, it diminished, it just disappeared. But I've had strange things like that, and they're always in conjunction with very, very vivid dreams. Since I've been in Australia, I've had one or two experiences like that again, because I haven't for a while, maybe 2 or 3 years, I've not had anything. But since I've been here, it started. But it is the source of it, I don't know, but it's some kind of electromagnetic field which is impacting upon the experience you have in the dream, because they're always very vivid when those things are about.
Because I'm actually a sleep science, and they would explain it as a hypnopompic hallucination. However, I've had it where I've actually managed to hit them and smack them away, and they've hit off a wall and then dissolved into the wall. So they've actually made a tinging noise, and I've felt the contact. And I just don't, and it's happened a lot of different places, I just don't think it's anything to do with just waking up, just that experience of waking up as a hallucination per se. Do you think it's something to do with your consciousness and accessing a different plane?
Well, everything's consciousness, so it's something to do with your consciousness or something to do with something seeking to manipulate your consciousness externally. I mean, I've been wide awake as well, with my eyes shut, just pondering on the world, and I felt this electromagnetic field around me, and I've not been asleep and woken up. I've just opened my eyes and seen them then. So it's not something to do with the waking up process, because I've seen them when absolutely wide awake.
Yeah.
The point is, and this is the point of the big events I do, like in Brisbane on Saturday. The world is so different to what we're told it is. If you look at this, what I call download of normal that everyone goes through, where you come into the world and immediately your perceptions are influenced by your parents and been through the same system you're about to go through. You then very quickly, you're in school, you're being told what is, what isn't, what's possible is possible, what the limits are, what reality is, everything, all the way through your formative years. And this goes on. The mainstream media are coming at life from that same perspective of this postage stamp normal, as I call it. And yet it's a tiny fraction of possibility. And when you step off the postage stamp and stop accepting it as the way things are, and start questioning it, and start looking at other information and other sources of information that the mainstream everything never touch, you realise the staggering scale of
Okay, so if those people who don't know, I'm sure most people know who David Icke is. He's very big, especially in the UK, but he travels around the world and he tries just to get people to open their eyes to what's really out there, the control system that we're under, etc., etc. We're not talking conspiracy tonight, but he does have those sorts of experiences, very similar to what I've had, and I'm sure other people have had too. Okay, I'm going to turn this one down because there's some bad language. This is just a brief example. Some little ones around. There's a brief example of somebody having a hypnopompic hallucination. So it's when they're waking up and they're seeing something. So my question is, what is it about the process of waking up where you're having these sort of hallucinations? What is the trigger? And we're going to talk about a few of the little things. And I'm not saying that everybody's experiences, and this is definitely what I'm saying, not everybody's experiences are hypnopompic hallucinations. This is very common, and this is what all the normal scientists say it is. Everything, abductions, everything. It's all explainable by this. So that's... Okay, so we get to the good stuff, the juicy ones. So visitations. So you can have it in all sorts of different forms. Aliens, incubi and succubi. So the succubi are the female version, and it means to lie under. So they're the females, and the male one is the incubo, which means to lie upon. And so these are the demons that were very common, been recorded since at least the 14th century. But probably a long time before that in folklore, and all across the world, is you have the incubi and the succubi. So demons that visit you at night have their wicked way with you, and you usually don't want to agree to it, but some do. And you feel that weight on your chest. You might not see anything, but you feel it, and you can feel what they're doing with you. And I had a friend who had a horrendous experience where she woke up, she felt something licking her ear, she felt the breath, she felt the weight on her, she felt everything. She was really, really terrified. Now again, what you'd say is it's sleep paralysis and hallucinations combined that you're having these experiences. So I'm quoting Carl Jung here. He says that active imagination requires a state of reverie, which is halfway between sleep and waking. We still have no definition about what dreams actually are or imagination. You're having that experience. So if you're, whatever you're imagining, you know, whatever it is that's going on in your mind at the time, it's a real experience to you. Okay, it's subjective, but it's a real experience. So you're having that experience. So it is actually reality. It might be your personal reality, but it's still a reality. We've got to try and work out the difference between reality and the other types of reality. So we're talking about a difference between holotropic and holotropic. So this is a very brief one as well. Just quickly, this is a man who's having fun with somebody visiting him, playing. He's on CPAP, by the way, so he's got a mask on so he can't breathe properly. Just for those who can't imagine what it would look like. He doesn't seem very happy about this one. Some people might be, but he's certainly not happy about this. So he feels like he's being pinned down. Okay. So I think the type of experience that you have depends on your paradigm. So the definition of a paradigm is a concept or a thought pattern that you have created through your upbringing, your experiences, everything that's had any contact with you. You create this paradigm, whether you have belief systems in whatever it is, whether you're open to ghosts, aliens, whatever, or you're very religious and they're not mutually exclusive, whatever it might be. Carl Jung was one that defined this particularly, And I think that there's been an evolution of archetypes, so the type that we all experience, from fairies and goblins and those sorts of things, demons, to aliens, because since we've been aware of aliens, and there has been descriptions a long time, but since around the 50s it's been much more commonly reported. Now the question is, why? Is it because it's in the media more and we're being programmed? We've got all these end of world scenario films which come out every week, and it's always the aliens and they've got to save the world, whether it's whoever it is. That's what we've got to work about. So you can have people have, you know, the grandmother by the side of the bed, the demon. I've had the demon. The angel. I never get the angels. I don't know why. Something about me. Or the aliens. Now we're going to break in a minute. I just want to quickly go through this, and we're going to see a lot of UFOs and have experiences. We're going to have morning, afternoon tea, evening tea, whatever it is. Morning tea. You haven't been here that long. Different qualifications of UFO encounters. Now, you've probably all heard this if you've read Hynek's books. He was the one in 1972 who actually tried to quantify the different experiences people have when they see UFOs, because there's so many different ones, a dot in the sky, being abducted, whatever it might be. So he gave it 7 kinds, and he also gave a scale beforehand of 1 to 3. So if you see a light, if you see a disc, or there's some sort of radar visual, their scale's 1 to 3. Then you have close encounters of the first kind, so visual sightings, usually less than 500 feet away, but people find it difficult to be able to tell. Second kind, where you have a physical effect, so you might be blinded, or you might actually have something happen to you, or your radio turns off, because it's common in the car, and we're going to talk about why it might happen to you in the car. You shouldn't be asleep when you're driving, but it is a similar state. Third kind, any sort of animated creature, whether it be a grey or whatever kind of alien being. Fourth kind, when you're actually abducted by a UFO or an alien, you feel like you've been abducted. Fifth kind, CE5. We're going to talk about CE5, and I'm going to give you some brilliant examples of what's happened using CE5. We'll talk about that in a minute. Sixth kind, death of a human or animal, so often you have the animal mutilation. And then seventh kind, where you've been part of a breeding program and you have created some sort of human-alien hybrid, which a lot of people claim as well that they've had. And just to quickly finish this little bit, there's other subtypes that Ted Blurcher decided that you'd have it either inside a UFO or outside of a UFO, etc., etc. So there's lots of ways that they can try and scientifically quantify, because this is the problem we have. People have these experiences, they don't feel comfortable talking about them, they're often poo-pooed by people, especially the scientific people, but also the media. The media do a great job on us when we come out and say things. I've had that experience many times, and I'm sure a lot of you have if you've ever talked to the media. They have to make a twist at the end, so it looks like that they're playing along, but they're not really. So you want to have evidence that can be quantified. Now, experiences are often subjective, so it's usually one person, but they could be collective. And the idea is that you want it to be an objective experience, so that you've got some proof and evidence. And I'm going to talk about something that happened to me. I had an alien abduction experience, or I consider it to be. As I say, I'm open to all these things, but I actually had some evidence to prove that. I also had an alien healing experience, which we're going to talk about as well, which I think is quite incredible, last year. And I've got the physical evidence to prove that as well. Not that it was aliens, but that I had this miraculous healing over a very short period of time, an hour or so. So I think what we'll do is we'll leave it there, because we're going to talk about all the visitations now, and have a cup of tea or whatever. Yes? No?
No, I'm not having a cup of tea.
Oh, not a cup of tea. Sorry. What do we do? Oh.
We're going to have a break.
A quick break?
Yes.
Okay.
So 15 minutes break.
Okay. Awesome. Please come and get a card, and you can you don't have to talk to me if you don't want to. I can be scary, I suppose, but you can, if you email me, I would be fascinated to hear about your different experiences, any type of weird, strange experiences. I'm always trying to hear everyone's story, and I think everybody has a valid experience, and anyone who, some of these experiences I'm saying, some could be explained scientifically. Just remember, I'm not negating anyone's experience tonight. I'm just saying what scientists would say about qualifying some of these experiences. But I'm going to go on and tell you that there's a lot that cannot be qualified scientifically at the moment. So we have that big gaping space where, this has potential for all sorts of experiences. Okay, so we're going to talk about visitations. Shadow people are a very common one, and it's one that I had particularly when I was living in a haunted house. I spent 2 years. It was cheap, so I stayed for 2 years until it finally got to me. Every night I had a shadow being would appear. I'd wake up, there would be a shadow being standing there. Usually they have a trilby, or sometimes they have like a hood, or it can have a sort of a demonic figure with horns. But this is the most common one, or it can be alien, like a grey or a mantid, as we were talking about before. There's all types of different experiences that people can have. But it's again linked often with sleep paralysis. You can't do anything about it. You can't switch your light on. You can't escape. And you have this ominous feeling all the time that you're being watched. That's the main thing. You might wake up and think, oh, what's that? And then you see this being. Now, people would say it was just hallucinations, but the question is, what else could it be? It could be entities coming from other worlds. It could be crossovers with parallel universes. It could be time travelers coming. It could be anybody coming to check on you. We just don't know. And I think it's ridiculous that a lot of scientists in particular, and media, etc., will just put it in the crazies cupboard. So common this is that people are having this, and it's from a young age as well. But we're talking about adults, and these are often people who've been qualified as being professionals or in the military or any of the types of things that would qualify somebody as their opinion being more respected than others, which of course is ridiculous, but that's what they try and do. So yes, I had an experience in a haunted house where I was a student, and I had this shadow being every night. Now, I had a partner. He never ever saw the being. I would try and wake him up. He would never wake when this being was standing there. It would often be standing in the doorway, but not always. Sometimes they're right next to you, next to your bed. It wasn't often paralysis. Sometimes I would shout out and ask them to interact. They would never interact with me. And it was often associated with lots of other experiences, so lots of electrical experiences. I had things like the bulbs would start unscrewing in front of you and drop down and not break. The electricity would go on and off all the time, tapping, seeing things, seeing a being behind me, another shadow being when you're in the mirror, when you're just getting dressed or brushing your teeth, whatever. It's a very common experience. I didn't leave until I was actually writing a thesis at the time, balling up bits of paper, throwing them behind me, had tons of them. I was actually still working on a Mac, but it was on the old days when it was really hard to write on a Mac, and these bits, I just was sitting there, and these bits of paper just started flinging back at me. Nobody else in the place at all. It was an old property in County Durham, up on the top of a mountain, very scary. I was there all on my own. So then I went into the kitchen. I thought, I'm English, I'll make a cup of tea. Everything will be all right with a cup of tea. Put the kettle on, standing there waiting for a cup of tea to be made, and the whole wall, and this isn't alien related, but I think it's interesting, the whole cabinet came off the wall, and it actually floated. It didn't just fall straight down, floated. I was standing near the middle of the room, floated over, it inverted and tipped the contents. It was just an open cupboard, tipped the contents on me, went, and then put itself down next to me, and I was absolutely terrified. I was out of there so quick, and I love paranormal experiences. I invite ghosts, etc., which probably I shouldn't, but I do invite all these sort of experiences. But that time I got the farmer to check. They checked the wall. All the brackets was there. It was a farmer who owned it. I thought it was a bit strange when I moved in, it was really cheap, and all of the furniture was still there, including a piano from the students who'd left before, and he had no explanation why they'd left all their stuff. So it was only a couple of weeks. I mean, I had so many experiences, I won't talk about them, but it was only a couple of weeks later I saw it back up for the same price, and I thought, oh God, help the new student who gets there. So it's very common, but often the shadow people are associated with these type of experiences. Okay, so let's get to the good stuff, the alien abductions. So we've got an intense blue or white light. Now, I've had an experience, and I will tell you about it, a conscious experience, and it was an intense blue light that you see. You often have the buzzing or a humming sound, anxiety or fear, obviously, but I didn't have that. The sense of a presence, again, often associated with shadow beings, etc. 3 grey aliens, the most common thing. One that's in the middle is taller than the other 2. That's exactly what I saw, and I've interviewed so many people who've had these types of experiences, and it's very, very common. They have, sometimes you get to see a UFO with a bright light outside that you may be removed. You often feel that floating sensation, out-of-body experience. You might see your body down there, but you're out of the window, through the wall, and you're gone. 5 to 10% of Australians now think that they've had some sort of alien abduction experience. Can I have a show of hands of how many people think they've had some sort of abduction experience? Okay, couple, that's good.
That 10% figure, how did you get that?
Well, I looked it up. I looked up in one of the UFO research, not ours, but things. It wasn't through MUFON. It was from somewhere, but between 5 and 10%. I could find it somewhere. I've got hundreds. I've got stacks and stacks of papers that I read, because I prefer to read the scientific stuff rather than just the usual. But yeah, people say between 5 and 10% of Australians. It's more common here than it is other places. In America, of course, it's the most common. It's sometimes up to 20%. It's quoted. Yes, sorry.
What percentage of people have experience with shadow people? Can I have a show of hands? How many here have? And what's your figure, please, Gemma?
I don't have a figure on that, but I know that it's very common, and it's usually associated with that. So I don't know. I don't know. That would be guesswork, but it's much more common than the alien abduction experience, which is, of course, much more frightening, probably, because it often goes on to another place you're going to. Very common now. The question is why. It's becoming more and more common, people reporting that they're getting abducted. Is it the free Wi-Fi? I don't know. But you can imagine that people, that there could be some ways that they're trying to invite us. We don't necessarily know what it is, but some people are very happy about being abducted. It's not necessarily a negative experience. I loved my experience. I want more of them. I loved it. But some people obviously find it terrifying, which you can understand as well. And of course it depends on the nature of the abduction as well, and how scary they look too. Because obviously if they look really scary, you might not be wanting to go anywhere with them, whereas if they're pretty innocuous, then, So Susie Hansen, she's spoken here a couple of times. I interviewed her a few times as well. She wrote the book, The Dual Soul Connection. She's the director of UFocus NZ. She still is, I think. Yes, she is. In one of my interviews with her, she talked about the type of abduction experiences that people have. So I think it's interesting to hear, and you'll probably, if you've had this experience or know of somebody who has, see if you can pick out any of the commonalities.
Well, the manner in which you may be taken on board varies, and the craft that might come and pick you up vary. Whether it was by a beam of light, whether it was by walking into like a ball of light in a room, a large ball like a cavernous doorway, and then finding myself on a craft. Lots of different ways, lots of different shaped craft, equipped in different ways, piloted in different ways, and then again at the end how I was brought back. I'm taken on board a craft, taken up in a beam of light that took me up. Yes, it's like you hear someone say to you, wake up and bang, you're awake. But you're awake and then you're in like a peaceful state. So you can call that an altered state if you like, that's imposed on you. And I have been told many times by the Greys, this just makes it nice and simple. You're not thinking about whether you're in your nightgown or not. You're not thinking about whether you need to go to the toilet or any of those human thoughts. You just progress out to either meet them in the hallway or in your room, or you go outside, you leave the door unlocked, and you wait for a craft to come overhead. And those are all just things that are impressed on you, and you do that. And it simplifies and speeds it up because, let's face it, they're taking thousands of people on board to talk to them and do different things. It was taken by a small craft, quite a cramped little craft, with a pilot piloting it to a much larger craft. So taken into a hangar area, sometimes up underneath the craft, sometimes into the side of the craft, if a very large craft, into a hangar area, usually saucer shapes, but my car was actually uplifted into a big black triangle on one occasion by a sphere that had tripod legs that seemed to somehow lock onto the car. So there was a space of about 10 feet between my car and this object, and it just lifted my car up with it beside it. But on this occasion, taken into a hangar, you alight from the craft in different ways depending what kind of exit door, and there are usually walkways you go along, and you come to an area that you pass through, which are called a zapper area, because sometimes you are zapped by a big flash of light, other times you are zapped by a purpley pink light that extends right around the doorway. Sometimes you go into a glass cubicle where you get a suction feeling all over your body, like someone putting a vacuum cleaner tube onto your skin all over. And I consider that some kind of decontamination thing.
So that was Susie Hansen's experience, and she says that they're not all the same. That's sort of the generic type of experience that she's had, but she reckons she's been abducted hundreds and hundreds of times, and they're not all the same. So there's a lot of commonalities from it. But for her, it's always while she's in bed from sleep usually. So. Again, this is a picture that I drew. This is what I saw when I had my abduction experience. This is 1996. I was up in Scotland and I was having a weekend away, let's say, from university, and wasn't expecting anything. Now, usually I create all my holidays around the paranormal and getting to do really cool stuff and stay in really weird places, castles and all sorts, much to the problem of my kids. But, this one was just a very normal place. I wasn't expecting anything to happen. What had happened to me, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and 2 o'clock is a very, very common time, and I'll tell you why soon, for people to have these experiences, between 2 and 4 a.m. And I woke up and I had a very loud buzzing, and I was in just a little bed and breakfast in the middle of Edinburgh, and there was a little toilet, and I saw a bright blue light, and I thought, oh, there must be a helicopter overhead, and the blue light sort of was shining out from under the door, all around the door. And then the light sort of moved around, and there was a big bay window, and the light disappeared from there, and it came straight through the window. And with the light coming through, and I was thinking, ooh, this looks interesting. So being the scientist that I am, I looked at the time, 2:04, and I made sure I wanted to know what that was, having known about other people having experiences. I saw what was similar to this, but they were basically sort of like hovering through the window, came straight through at me. One was, again, taller than the middle being, and they looked just like greys. They had quite an opalescent type of skin. I knew I was awake. I was certain I was awake. I made sure I was awake. Tried to wake my partner next to me, of course useless, wouldn't wake up as usual. I wasn't experiencing any sleep paralysis. Now, I wasn't scared at all. I was absolutely excited as anything. I was so excited that I was going to get this experience, and I'm thinking, please don't let it be a dream. I'm sure it's not, but don't let it be. They came drifting to the side of me. And with telepathy, they basically told me that, oh, don't worry, there's nothing to be worried about. And I'm like saying out loud, I'm not worried, this is brilliant. And I remember looking at the clock again, and it was 2:07. I thought, right, what's going to happen? 2:07. So it's taken 3 minutes from seeing them out the window to them coming. You know, I'm thinking all this stuff all the time. I'm making sure I'm cataloguing my experience. I'm looking at the clock. The buzzing's happening, the light, everything. I feel this massive electrical charge, and there is a sort of a smell, like a sort of smoky smell. I do feel one of the beings touch me, as if to take my hand or something. And as I say, they were only using and expressionless, and it was as if they were using telepathy to sort of calm me down. But I was just too excited. Looking at the clock. It says 3:42, the lights disappeared, the buzzing stopped. I was gypped. I lost all that time, so I thought, oh my goodness, it's 3:42, looking around, jumped out of bed, the experience was over. So there was that missing time. So we've got about an hour and 40 minutes, something like that, missing time. And as I say, I was staring at the clock that was next to me, one of those digital clocks, and the time just changed from 2:07 to 3:42. And everything had happened, and I thought, oh, woke my partner up. Of course, he wakes up now, told him all about it. Yeah, I have all these sort of experiences before. I said, this is a new one, this is good. Told him all about it, but said, I don't remember anything. Thought nothing much about it, finally got back to sleep, got up, went for breakfast, asked the people who were in, you're in a little bed and breakfast, having breakfast. I was asking everybody, did anybody see anything last night, hear anything, see any bright lights? Nobody said anything. Asked the owner, have you ever had any experiences like that where anybody said anything? No, nothing. Thought, oh, well, I think I've had some sort of experience, but no evidence. Go back into the room, and I'm getting changed to go out. We're packing and leaving. It was just one night. My partner notices on the bottom of my back, right at the base of the spine, probably, I don't know, 5 cents, 10 cents mark on my back, and says, "What's that?" And it's actually a puncture. It's not just a bruise. It's like actually, some skin's missing. And I thought, fantastic, I've got proof. This is it. It happened. I know it happened. But that was it. And I've not had as vivid an experience like that to do with, well, I have, but I'm going to talk about that, to do with aliens where I feel like they've taken me away. So very common experience for some, but not for all. So another thing that you would feel, but I didn't get to feel this, is astral travel. Now, you can go in courses and learn to astral travel. It's a commonly accepted thing that you can do this. I've been trying to astral travel, and I think I've done it a few times, but nothing that I've convinced myself with. And it's the sensation of actually leaving your body, floating out, and often you can go and explore. And it's common in meditation, etc. Can be linked to out-of-body experiences and obviously abduction experiences. It's been linked to theta wave production. So people who can actually do astral travel a lot, they've stuck an EEG on them, had a look, and there's theta wave production that is associated with that. Now remember, theta wave production is between 4 and 7 hertz frequency, and it happens when you're having REM sleep. It commonly happens there, and it's around the central area. Also that's linked is the pineal gland, and often you will produce DMT as well, and we're going to talk a bit about DMT. And it gives you this experience of flying out of the bed or into a UFO, whatever it might be. So the question is it a real experience, or is it just a feeling? Now, there's been studies done. We've got Andrew Smith and Claude Messier. They were at the University of Ottawa, and they looked at subjects, as I said, who can travel at will, who claim to be able to astrally travel, and they can describe things that are in a room or elsewhere and whatever. So they're actively traveling. And they did MRI imaging functional MRI, so that's at the same time, so the imaging at the time that it's happening, slice by slice, and they said that there was a strong deactivation of the visual cortex. So the activation of the left side associated with kinesthetic imagery was heightened. So you're having all these feelings, but you're not being able to see things. So the things that they're saying they're seeing is not necessarily with their visual eyes, it might be something that they're experiencing more. They say that there's many causes for this. This is the scientific terms. Traumas, sensory deprivation can cause it, near-death experiences, psychedelic drugs such as DMT, very common, and electrical stimulation as well. You've got the God helmet. Persinger created the God helmet with the temporal lobe stimulation. That's all associated with astral travel. So I just want to show you, we're just linking it all to sleep patterns. So you've got about 4, maybe 5, and if you have a really good long sleep, you can have up to 7 different patterns, times when you go into REM sleep. So often you'll wake up with them, you might not remember them, but some people often do, and they write them down, or they have experiences. And then you have the non-REM sleep times, which is when you can be in either light sleep. Most commonly 50% of the time is in light sleep. Usually between 20 and 30% of the night is in REM sleep. But you can be in deep sleep, or you can still have dreams while you're in non-REM sleep, but they're usually more functional times. So the reason for most abduction type experiences, paranormal experiences between 2 and 4, that's when you're most likely with your normal, if you're doing normal, not shift work, but obviously just doing normal sleep, going to bed between 10 and midnight or earlier if you're a kid, hopefully, then you'd expect. Children usually have the experiences from about 11 onwards, maybe 10 p.m, whereas adults it's usually about 2 a.m. that you have these experiences. So people often, and I used to do this when I was talking to people. I would see them having dreams, maybe sometimes they were acting them out. I would see them in REM, and I'd note down the times that they were having REM. If I had to go in and talk to them anyway, I would say, oh, you were just dreaming. What were you dreaming about? And ask them. Most of the time, about 80 to 100% of the time, if you're woken while you're having REM, or it's just after you've had that experience, you can recount it. But often by the morning it fades, and as you know, as day goes on, it's gone. So it's always good to write a dream diary and try and write them down, your experiences, whether it's a dream or it's more vivid, or what kind, when it was and what it was that you're experiencing, and also what you were feeling, because often the emotions that are attached to it are really important. Oh, where's my thing gone? It's gone on no internet. Hang on. Oh, I've lost it. Oh, there it is. So lucid dreaming, again, is where you actively can, and I do this a lot now, you can train yourself to do it, to actively participate in your dream. You can program yourself to have a trigger to have in the dream, so that if you can turn a light switch on, that's a common one, or you can whistle a tune, or tell yourself to do something every time in the dream. You can then know that you're lucid dreaming, or you think you're lucid dreaming. You might be, as I say, experiencing it. Up to 20% of Australians have experienced lucidity during dreaming, and this is definitely from the papers. I've got stacks and stacks of papers that I've been collecting on sleep and dreams, and this is when you wake people up and you get them to do questionnaires, etc. So as I say, lucid dreams nearly always in REM sleep, and you're producing, again, as I said, theta wave sleep, some alpha, but mostly theta, and you release DMT. So we're going to move on to linking what dreams are and altered consciousness and your experiences are. So the question is, what is reality, really? We have no idea. We have a consensus reality. So we're agreed now, well, hopefully, that we're all sitting here together. We're listening to a talk, etc. You're sitting in a chair, you're breathing. That's our consensus reality. That's what we're signing up to, agreeing to. But we're told that a lot of the experiences that we have, we can't have them. We're not allowed to experience them. They don't exist. And that's the difference, that accepting this consensus reality that we're being programmed to believe, and that we can't have these other experiences. And science is being programmed in that way through funding there's only a few people like Sheldrake, etc., who actually get the opportunity to look into what other realities are. Usually it has to be like the mushroom farmers, Terence McKenna, etc., who get to experience those sorts of things and do the research. So James Gilliland, he was here, he talked a couple of years ago, and he works with ESETI, and he is one of those who says that you can call the aliens in, or you can actually just get them. The most common thing he does is just get you to power up. So you can go there, you do some meditations, to his ranch at Mount Adams in North California. Washington, that's it, Washington, so it's above California, Washington State, and you can go and stay there and pay to do all this and have a really cool experience.
Do you have dreams? What do you think dreams are? The difference between a dream and something that you may experience in this reality?
There's no saying that imagination is real on the level of imagination, so it's all real. I think this is more of a dream, this world, and the other worlds, to me, are more real. But, I have crazy dreams. And lately it's been real crazy because the whole collective consciousness is undergoing a huge shift. So I've had everything from doing battle on these other levels and help cleaning up these other levels and working with all kinds of strange experiences to just total blissful dreams where I'm walking with these masters and things like that. So it's like full spectrum dreams, and every once in a while one's just a process dream where I'm processing what happened throughout the day, and things like that. But there's a lot of different types of dreams. If you're going to do dream analysis, it's good to understand what kind of dream it is. If it's an astral dream, a lower astral level, it's going to be a nightmare. It's going to be ugly and messed up. If it's a master teaching you something, it would probably be filled, more of I'm sitting with this guy and he's showing me, gardens and futures and things like that. It would be different usually, And if it's just a process dream, it's usually, it could even be what you ate, can create a different type of dream.
So you see things through your dreams, or is it always in this realm?
Yeah, in meditations or dreams. I have a lot of dreams where I'll see future events and I'll see the different beings that are helping us right now. And it's incredible what's happening right now because the ancient ones are returning. And so you've got the ancient Anunnaki, the ones that never fell, and they're returning. You've got these incredible Pleiadian beings. There's Andromedans, which are mythologically known as archangels. A lot of them, they're 8 to 10 foot tall beings with magnetized light bodies. And you've got the Pleiadians, the Orion Council of Light. And now these new kids on the block are these Syrian beings that are actually in Lyra too as well, but they're lion beings. And they're huge. They're 17 feet tall. Like Sekhmet was one, and she's 14 feet. There's statues of her that are 14 feet tall, and she is that big. And they're the protectors of the gods, falling too, and they're fighting amongst themselves right now. So that's where you're having all these banksters flying off of buildings, and it's incredible what's happening right now because the ancient ones are returning. And so you've got the ancient Anunnaki, the ones that never fell, and they're returning. You've got these incredible Pleiadian beings. There's Andromedans, which are mythologically known as archangels. A lot of them, they're 8 to 10 foot tall beings with magnetized light bodies. And you've got the Pleiadians, the Orion Council of Light. And now these new kids on the block are these Syrian beings that are actually in Lyra too as well, but they're lion beings. And they're huge. They're 17 feet tall. Like Sekhmet was one, and she's 14 feet. There's statues of her that are 14 feet tall, and she is that big. And they're the protectors of the gods.
So that was James Gilliland just giving his experience. As I say, I've managed to talk to so many different people from all different walks of life, from all over the world. And there's so many commonalities between their experiences. One person might say, I have purely alien experiences. One might say they're angelic. They may quantify them in different ways, but I think it's the paradigm that you have that creates the manifestation that you're experiencing. It might not necessarily be a Pleiadian or whatever, but they're nice to look at. You know, they're long, blonde, tall beings who are known to be nice. So it's a better one to see than some horrible demon. So that's what he was talking about. So I found there's lots of commonalities between them. Now, it's not all, obviously, a lot of people have had experiences, alien abduction experiences, where they've not actually been asleep, they think. One of the most famous ones is Betty and Barney Hill, 1961 in New Hampshire, driving along, and then saw the craft, etc., etc. That was in New Hampshire. Now, there's a thing called highway hypnosis, and I'm sure all of you who drive have had it. You're driving along, you know where you're, and suddenly you're there, and you think, oh, I'm pleased I got there safely. And what they found is that you're actually producing theta waves at that time. So you're functioning, but you're also producing theta waves, and this is giving you that sort of meditative type of experience. You might be daydreaming, you could be thinking about the cat, or I don't know, a lover, or whatever it might be, and suddenly you're somewhere. But your brain's been able to do the job for you, and this is highway hypnosis. So it's easy to be able to link that experience to, again, opening this type of gateway. So it's possible that you could be using theta waves and production of DMT to actually open this gateway to allow yourself to have these sorts of experiences. Remember that children commonly have these experiences all the time. They're always seeing beings and things. It's just some people it never switches off. For me, it never switched off. But often it's usually about 7 or 8, maybe 9 years old, that they're being told the consensus reality is telling them, you not see, there's no such thing as fairies, and there's not this and there's not that. Well, how do we know that, really? Definitively, we do not know that, and we can't say that. So highway hypnosis could be a state where they've both been traveling. Often people have these experiences at night. So I'm not saying that they've imagined the experiences, but they're actually having these theta experiences, and so they might be inviting or having this gateway where it's changing their perception and allowing them to have these types of encounters, close encounters. Okay, we've got to do C SETI. Of course, we can't not mention C SETI. So C5, it's the 5th category. It's a way of having bilateral. This is the definition: bilateral ETI, human communication based on mutual respect and universal principles of exchange and contact. This is what Dr. Stephen Greer says. And when he came over, I hope some of you got to meet him. Now, if there's ever a reptilian, he is one of them, I tell you. I had to give him a cuddle just to find out, but not a nice person, and anybody who's ever met him knows he's really not a nice person. But we can't be rude to the reptilians. But he founded C SETI in 1990, Centre for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And what it is, it's a worldwide effort, he says, to concentrate the attempts to vector UFOs to initiate communication. So they have this whole massive dossier of contact protocols where you use light, sound, and thought specifically. So this is, again, manipulating your consciousness through meditation and sound to initiate contact. Now, specifically, this is with alien beings, alien UFO craft. Again, how do we define alien? Are they really extraterrestrial? Are they really from another planet? Are they from somewhere else? Are we just manifesting that we're imagining that they have to be extraterrestrial? They could be anything. They could be what everybody would call demons, ghosts, other worlds. Different groups of people. If you're a magical practitioner, you would consider that they were from one of the different realms. There's 4 different worlds. So what happened was I had an experience which was absolutely incredible experience, and I've told some of you about this nearer the time when it happened. It was in 2013, and this C SETI had just come out. They'd just made the app, and you can get it, you can download it. I think it's like $1 or a couple of dollars maybe now, I don't know. But you can download it on your thing, and it's basically a couple of meditations from Dr. Stephen Greer, and it's a way of initiating. Now, there's two of us, we were on top of Mount Glorious, fabulous location, brilliant view, full moon, which wasn't good, but you know, we had to choose our times. Full moon, it was a Friday night, I think, or Thursday night, and I had a camera running, trained on the biggest area of the sky, night vision camera. I had audio running, and I had some sensors for electromagnetic activity running, etc. And we were doing this, and I'd only been doing it for about 10 minutes. Now, this was our first ever attempt at doing this. And as I say, it was pretty new, the app, and I was like desperate to try it. And we were both open-minded about what was going to happen. So you'll hear he's very, very loud, and I can't change that. I tried changing it. He's very loud, but try and listen to my experiences. I had 3 encounter experiences, and they'll just be joined one to the other with a little gap in between. But this was only over a period of about 10-15 minutes and not long into the actual app. So if some of you have done CE5, you'll actually recognize where it probably is.
Is that whatsoever you contemplate within it, within the form, the specific astral
so
light,
he's got a really monotonous tone, and he's trying to make you in this meditative
there exists this
tone.
Most great one.
So you're zoning out.
And then we behold that within every world, every atom, every person, within this light, unique to its form, is a tone.
But it was a massive ball of light.
Perfect resonant tone, unique to that object or being,
went straight across there, and then it just went poof.
And as we transcend into the oneness of thought and sound, this resonant,
he didn't see it. So annoying. He was looking the opposite way.
We behold that every star, planet, and being has this perfect tone within it that blend into one. And this is the primal thought emanating from the absolute unbounded being, pure consciousness.
Very excited. Okay, so this is just a couple of minutes later.
So it's got 69 minutes left on the battery, and it was recording fine.
Camera turned off, of course.
So, oh God Almighty, I can't believe what I saw. I really can't believe what I saw. I'm just trying to get my head around it, Alex.
Well,
I'm not joking. I saw Halley's Comet for days.
I saw that.
Did you see it?
I did see that.
Smaller one.
Yeah, that was cool.
But that was much smaller, and that was white.
That was white. That was a cool one.
A couple of minutes later, if that.
Yeah.
Going off.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's one of my favourite wines. I drink it.
We're having a little wine break because he tried to shut me up. He's trying to drunk me now.
Just a black label.
I wouldn't shut up, and he was so jealous.
It's very cheap. It's like $10. What time is that? It's 10:25.
What is it? It's the black label.
Can we just discuss what we just saw?
If you like. So there was a black shadow.
And something circular went straight across us.
Yeah.
It was a circle.
Could it have been a bat?
No.
It was a bit wide, wasn't it?
It was big and it was circular and it went straight across us.
Cool.
Okay, so
it's one of my favourite wines.
No, I don't need that. Don't need that one again. But I was so excited, and he was so jealous. He said, we'd brought some wine. We hadn't had any yet, obviously. But he said, look, have a glass of wine. Just calm down, because we want to continue on, and I want you to stop just going on about it, because it's really annoying me. But he saw the big streak as well. Now, the thing that I saw was absolutely enormous. It was bigger than the moon. And I saw it again 2 weeks later when I was with him again. I wasn't doing anything, meditation or anything. I was actually come back from a concert, and I was going home and I was a bit tired. I was just getting into the car, and it streaked across the sky and it left a big trail. Now I checked that if there'd been any sort of meteorites or anything coming, and it was not like that, because they're usually like a slow streak that you see. This was much faster, and then it just sort of stopped and sort of glowed and then disappeared. But the trail was there for at least a couple of seconds. Then we saw these big white ones streaking across the sky, which could have been something else. And then we saw them. I didn't have that on audio because I switched it off, but I had the audio running. They were jugging about. When we were sitting having the wine, as I say, we went quiet because we were sitting there on a picnic blanket. As I say, it was full moon, just sitting there chatting. He's trying to shut me up, and because I'm just going on and on, but I was so excited. And this big shadow, black shadow, came between us and the moon, and it just came right across us, and we both looked down, and it was a massive circle shape. It was probably the size of this room, came right across us and just kept passing across. We were looking in the sky, you couldn't see anything, there was nothing there, so whatever it was cloaked, but it was breaking the light between us and the moon, and it just kept going. And then he just keeps going on about the wine, and I'm like, no, stop. You tell me what you just saw, because I'm not imagining this. You tell me what you just saw. So that's one of the experiences. So that's with CE5, and lots of people have had many, many experiences with them. I've had many more as well, but that was definitely the best and the first. This is a picture I took of a UFO, and this was when I was called out of my house, and I saw this green light jumping around, and I actually had my camera, because I was actually changing my camera insert thing, SD card at the time, and suddenly had a telepathy to go outside, and all I could see was a green light that was right outside, and it was moving around. I was actually in Sherwood here in Brisbane. Took the photo, call it the flying frog. So we can manifest UFOs. I'm sure of it. I'm sure we can, and that's what CE5 is all about. But it might be through just being able to see and perceive them through the change in the theta waves. As I say, you go into this meditative state and you're producing theta waves, and it may be accessing this. I had an experiment that I did. I was with a group of magical people who all practice magic, which is real, by the way, but we were practicing magic. I said, let's see if we can do this experiment. Let's see if we can manifest a UFO. We were out in the middle of nowhere. I did all the preliminary tests, made sure that we went in a flight path, whatever. There's probably about 10 of us, something like that. One of them's here tonight, who was part of the experiment, and they were like, oh, okay, yep. Most of them had never had an experience like that of seeing a UFO. Somebody chose a tiny area of the sky, and I mean I made sure they were choosing a tiny area, and I said, I know that all these people are good at focusing and producing theta waves because of the practice that they do. Said all focus on that point, and it was literally within 10, 20, 30 seconds, and I said, qualify what it is we're going to see. We're going to get somebody said they wanted a big white light that appears and swells and then disappears, and that's exactly what we got. And you can verify that, yeah. So that's exactly what you got. So you can do that. Now, I don't know what it is that we did. We manifested something. Was it just the consensus between us that we were going to create this and manifest it? There was another time, I've told a few people about this, but there's another time we went to St. Helena Island. I got a group, it was the UFO group, and also I was doing my radio show at the time, and I got lots of people to come over. We were going to St. Helena, doing a ghosty and combined UFO, let's get them all in thing. So there was loads of, it was like 90 people. I wanted 20 so I could get the boat, because it costs so much money to get the boat, so I wanted a minimum of 20 to run. Anyway, we got so many to go, and before that, a week before, a group of us who were on the committee decided between us secretly that we were going to meditate every night, and that we were going to manifest a UFO for people. So no fakery, we're going to do it. And we'd agreed that we would do the same thing at a specific time every night, and we'd all agreed we were going to do it. Now, we described that again, it wasn't my idea, but we described that they wanted a bright light to appear, and then that it would drop down, and it would be right in front of us. We didn't say the time, but we'd said, like, we meditated that it was going to happen. We did some of the ghosty stuff, and we were walking to the area where everybody was going to settle down, and we were going to do some CE5. And there was a group of us quite a lot of us, just in a chain, we were all sort of walking down, and many of us saw the experience. It was exactly as we said. A big white light appeared, and it sort of dropped down in front of us. And and many people saw this, and between us we were like, wow, did we just do that? How could we have done that? So that was premeditated. It wasn't at the time, and we hadn't dictated exactly when it was. So another person who says that they've had lots of experience with manifesting UFOs is Damien Knott, again, of Australian Aerial Phenomenon Investigations. So just have a little brief listen to what he says.
It was more not me predicting, it was more so I would get a feeling. And it was a feeling of anxiety, like a deep anxiety, almost like that mixed with someone watching you. And then whenever I get that feeling, I would go outside, and not all the time, sometimes there'd be something there up in the sky, and sometimes you'd be, oh wow, that's incredible. So you think, oh, did that have something to do with the feeling? And so when it happens time and time again, you think, okay, maybe it does have something to do with the feeling, but at the same time, you don't see them every time you go out. So, you know, when you get that feeling, so are they there and you're just not seeing them? Or so I think possibly it's me just picking up, and this is extremely, like 10 times stronger than any sort of normal anxiety that you would feel. But it's only very short lasting, and it comes and it goes. And then,
still getting it?
Every now and then, but very rarely. Very rarely.
So that's Damien Knott. Another person who I interviewed was Ray Hernandez, Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Experiences. Now, he came over and spoke 3 or 4 years ago now, I think it was, and they did that massive survey, which is where I think, whoever it was that asked me, where I think I actually got that data from about Australia. They did a massive online survey, which I thought was really poor scientifically, and I did tell them what they needed to do, but they didn't change it when they did the big one. But they collected a lot of data, and they've produced the book since then. Ray Hernandez is going to talk about how he manifested a UFO.
And so it was an August day, August night, 9 o'clock, a totally cloudy sky. And so then I'm never at night outside in front of my house. We live in a very suburban area, very large lots, super quiet neighborhood. For the first time, really, I'm looking at night the area where my wife saw that UFO. And so I started thinking, wow, that was a huge craft. And so I said, what the hell, let me try it. Well, I'm waiting for my friend. So it wasn't serious. It wasn't like I was meditating for 3 or 4 hours. I was fasting, any of these things. No, it was like, what the heck? I got 15 minutes to burn while my friend is waiting. Let me give it a try, you know? And so I'm saying, and this is more or less what I was saying. I want to see the beautiful angelic craft that my wife saw. She had the privilege of seeing you. She described you had windows, just like the stained glass windows of our church. She calls you her angels. You cured our dog. You performed a miraculous healing. She had the privilege of seeing you, but I didn't have the privilege of seeing you. Could you please show up, right? And you know, my eyes closed, you know, with my hands up, you know, doing that. So I was like sort of like half into it and half just, you know, and so then I would stop and I would turn around, I would look around, nothing happened. So I repeated that and nothing happened. So after 15 minutes, I'm freaking going crazy. This UFO stuff has got me nuts, you know. I need to quit this stuff. I need to stop doing this, you know. Now I'm calling down a craft. And so then immediately when I thought that, boom, right on top of my neighbor's house. And we're talking 5 feet, which is, I guess, 2 meters from the roof of my neighbor's house. And he has a ranch-style house. Appeared this huge football stadium-sized craft. So like the Sydney football stadium or something. It was comprised of thousands and thousands of oblong streaks of light. And the streaks would not do a 360 all the way around. It would either do a quarter or a half, you know, of the oblong. But it was, they would finish it each other up. So that was like one line. Now if you multiply it by 1,000, you get the whole skeleton to the craft, okay? And then inside, there were like these white plasma streaks inside. So it was semi-transparent. You could see the clouds on the other side, but the vast majority were these white oblong streaks with these energy plasma inside. It was all white streaks. I was very relaxed, very peaceful, very tranquil.
Right, we really have to move on. Okay, quickly, DMT. DMT is produced endogenously. We produce DMT. It's dimethyltryptamine, and it's being used regularly for people to have trips. It is very fast acting, and it usually lasts for about 30 minutes. Most people usually smoke it. Studies were done in 1990s by Strassman, where he did lots of experiments, controlled experiments. He was I wish I had been one of the participants in his lab doing injecting them. And people have these crazy experiences. It's often used as shamanistic rituals. It's, as I say, produced by the pineal gland, and there's all these ideas that the pineal gland is being denatured purposefully through fluoride, etc. I'm sure you've heard Colin talk about it. And there's something to that. I definitely think there's something to that. It's called the spirit molecule because it alters consciousness. It's produced in times of stress and also during REM as well. So again, I think it's a combination of these things, and through meditation as well, that you can produce it. McKenna, he's often talked about doing it, and he's smoked DMT many times. He called them the machine elves. Often people who've had these experiences through either taking ayahuasca or whatever will see blue beings, humanoid, maybe animal forms, and they'll have these incredible alien type experiences. The question is, are they having real experiences? Or is it just the brain chemistry? Or is it the brain chemistry that's allowing you to have these experiences? Which I think is really important to question. If it's similar to the experiences you're having in REM sleep, then it must be happening and being tapped on. Okay. I have to tell you about this one very, very quickly, because this is my experience that I had, a near-death experience last year. Injured my ankle. It's actually on the website. Injured my ankle. I was in a wheelchair for 7 weeks. I actually developed a DVT in my leg, and had a scan, and I've got the scans. I'll show you quickly. I went back to work. They said that it would take about 6 months. I was put on blood thinners to clear. I went back to work, and I was just as a sleep scientist, and felt really unwell, heart racing. They found out I was tons of pulmonary embolisms all across my chest. So the clot had actually, a small part of it had broken off and gone all around my chest. I was still on the blood thinners. They said, there's nothing we can do. You can either stay here or go home. Went home. Was on like 24-hour watch, because anything can happen. More bits can break off or whatever. You could die. You might not. You might be able to be fine. You don't know. It's one of those where they can't really do anything. Second night, I was feeling really bad. I felt like I was dying. I couldn't breathe. I was lying in bed, and I was actually watching some videos about spies or something to take my mind off it. And I thought, I'm fed up with this. I've had so many of these paranormal experiences. I'm going to make use of them. So I sat there and I said, okay, aliens, you come, you help me. You heal me. Angels, whatever you are, ghosts, beings, people who from the past, whatever you are, you come and heal me now. This is the crux time. I feel like I'm dying. I'm not going to die. You're going to help me. And I remember sitting there, and I still had this stupid video playing, and I fell asleep, or I think I fell asleep, passed out. I ended up in a big foyer. I was in a black area in this room, and there was a tall white standing there, and I'm like, oh my God, tall white, yes, interview. Straight over to her, and I said, I want to interview you for my radio show. I've got to talk to you. And I'm having this surreal experience. And she just sort of looks at me and is like, and I'm in this sort of seated position. I go through these doors into this enormous auditorium. Oh, you can't really see it on there. There's an enormous auditorium full of people and beings, not just people, beings, all sorts. And I have this feeling that I know them all. I get whizzed to the front of the thing, and on the screen is my past life experiences, all the experiences that I've had flashing up there, and I go, oh, whoa, 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 because I've had these interviews before. I'm not dying, no way. I've already had two near-death experiences. I'm not doing this one again. And I just went, nah. And I literally sat there and I went, nah, not looking, not participating. There's somebody there waiting for me to have these experiences and move on. not doing it. No. Suddenly the chair sort of flies back, this chair thing that I'm sitting in. It goes back through the doors, and I'm sitting again next to this tall white. And I said, thank God, that stupid thing's over with. Right, interview time. And she just looks at me, and she's doing telepathy, and she's really tall, about 8 foot tall, long blonde hair, exactly as you would expect. Now, some people would see her as an angel. Obviously, I saw her as a tall white. And I said, oh, you know, I want an interview. She goes, no, we're here to heal you. And straight away she puts a headset over my head, with like metal headset with a little ball on the end, and she puts it into my mouth. And it tasted really bad. It was like an almond poisonous taste, and it was really strong. I spat it straight out and I went, oh, no, we're not doing this. And in telepathy again, and I could feel those beings all around me. She said, we're here to heal you. And I thought, oh, okay. All right, let's give it a go. So it goes in my mouth. Next thing I know, I wake up. Now, this is probably, I don't know, 6, 7 a.m., something like that, probably 6:30 a.m. And the experience has only been 10 minutes, maybe at the most, since I actually felt like I'd fallen asleep. The video had just finished as well that I was watching. Fortunately, that morning, I was going for a scan. I had a 9 a.m. scan. I'm feeling great, by the way. I'm thinking, oh my God, I can breathe and everything. Tell my partner about my experience. Tell everybody about my experience. Say I've been healed. I've got these 3 scans. You can't see them, but proof. 2 different times. Third time I went for this scan, and they're looking at the DVT, because they were doing it every so often. Nothing else had broken off. And she does it on my leg, and she goes, oh. And I was like, what? And she's like, there's nothing there. It's not possible. Even on the thinners, even if it had all gone to your chest, which obviously didn't because it didn't kill you, it's not possible. It had totally gone, totally. And I didn't say anything to her. I was with my daughter at the time, but when I got out, I went, the aliens did it. It must have been. But then I thought about it, and I thought, well, actually, maybe it wasn't the aliens. Maybe I asked the aliens. I asked out for help, but I used myself to self-heal, you know, because that's a possibility. It doesn't have to be. Maybe the paradigm was that I'd created this alien, this manifested alien, but not necessarily did it happen. So I had proof of a true, real healing. I was absolutely fine. Saw my doctor. I saw him that afternoon. He actually left a message saying, oh my God, what happened? Your scan's clear. It's impossible. It's impossible. I went and saw him, and I said, have you got an open mind? Told him about the experience. He said, wow, it's miraculous. He said, look, I'm not questioning it. We have no explanation for it, but it happened. So that's proof. So we just need to look at what the difference between experiences are. Almost there. So you've got subjective and objective experiences. So we're bringing it all together now. So if you've got an individual having a sleep experience, a paranormal experience, it's obviously just subjective. It's whatever you're experiencing, but there's not really any evidence other than what you're saying. Objective experiences you want is where you have proof, like I have the scan. I didn't prove that I had an alien healing experience, but I proved I was healed. I was healed. I was dying and I was healed. I reckon, I hope it was myself, because I think that's better, if it's cooler if I thought I did it myself. There's lots of different experiences, dream telepathy experiments, especially by Kripner, where you can share your consciousness. So we're talking about sharing consciousness with other people, sending dreams. I've had that with many people. I've done experiments with some people here, and I've verified where you can send a dream and they will have the experience. So we've got this consensus reality, which is what you'd call a holotropic reality, which Groff says. And the holotropic one is the one that encompasses the use of DMT and your theta waves, and actually experience what is really around here. Not the consensus reality, but what's real. Rupert Sheldrake, the scientist, says contemporary science is based on philosophy of materialism, which claims that all reality is material or physical, which of course it isn't. We know it's not. Terence McKenna, mushroom farmer, psychonaut, says we call reality is in fact nothing more than a culturally sanctioned and a linguistically reinforced hallucination. That's our reality. And again, there's a few people that have said that. Perception is less of a recording system and more of a protection system against external stimuli. Maybe that's why children switch it off when they learn to, because there's a lot of things out there and it's hard to control, so you're using it as a protection system. How can we explain this? Said Rupert Sheldrake's done fantastic research on morphic resonance, and he says that you can have this, use that as an example for this shared consciousness. So we're all tapping into the shared consciousness. It provides explanation for telepathy, etc. Better not go into it too deeply. Just want to show you again, theta waves, the brain time. Lots of people have done other research. Stanislav Grof said that the consciousness is mediated by the brain, but is not the originator. So if you imagine yourself as just, your brain as just being a radio, which is, it's often people have said that, you're just using the different brain waves or the brain chemicals to just tune it to be able to experience the other things. And that happens in deep meditation, signs of stress, REM, sleep, etc. So to conclude, the consequences of the mechanics of sleep can explain only some, I reckon, as a scientist, only some of the experiences, like you can, when you have sleep paralysis, etc. But the other experiences are probably real. But we have to question what is real. So REM sleep, altered state of consciousness, enables this portal for any alien or whatever supernatural experience it is that you have through DMT production and theta wave. And it's the paradigm, so it's how you've been programmed, or you've programmed yourself as to what you're going to see or experience, whether it's aliens. They're programming us to see aliens at the moment and have end-of-world scenarios. They're doing it all the time. They're doing ghosts and stuff as well. So we've moved from the nice fairies and those sorts of things to these more horrific type of experiences. But I think that's what's happening. Carl Jung again said supernatural beings are using our consciousness as doorways into reality. So he actually said that a long time ago now. So I think it's not supernatural but supernormal, and that whole consciousness, so accepting the whole of the consciousness rather than the accepted one, is the key to understanding the experiences. Rupert Sheldrake again said the science delusion, and I agree totally with this as a scientist, is the belief that science already understands the nature of reality in principle, leaving only the details to be filled in. Terence McKenna said, for all we know nothing, and I agree. 1890, last slide, William James said, this is in 1890, the world of our present consciousness is only one out of many worlds of consciousness that exist, and that those other worlds must contain experiences which have a meaning for our life also. And that although in the main their experiences and those of the world keep discrete, so we're trying to keep them discrete, there are points where the two become continuous and higher energies filter in. And I think that production of DMT, endogenous DMT or smoking DMT, however you want to take it, in combination with theta waves is the gateway that we're having these experiences. And so thank you for listening to me for all that time, and thank you very much.